Some men just want to watch the world burn. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, there is a study reported on by Thomas Edsall, who's a columnist in the New York Times, out of the American Political Science Association. The winner of this year's Best Paper Award in Political Psychology Division was, and here's the title of it, Need for Chaos and the Sharing of Hostile Political Rumors in Advanced Democracies. The upshot of the study was that thanks to social media, that a marginal group of people who like the idea of more chaos in society have gained a much more prominent voice. In fact, played a significant role in the 2016 election and are more likely than not, according to one of the authors of this study, there's a correlation between the need for chaos and a positive sympathy for President Trump. There's more to it than that, and we'll get into it in a second. But just on the face of it, what do you think of the results of this study?
You said that it was in the New York Times. Who did you say that
It's a columnist in the New York Times who wrote the article about it, but he's reporting on this paper from the American Political Science Association, the award-winning paper.
Right.
His name is Thomas Edsall.
Okay, so
Edsall, not to be confused with the Ford Motor Company Edsalls.
Reporter from the New York Times consults the U.S. Psychological Association or whatever it is, and determines that the election was lost due to small number of savage barbarians who thrive on chaos and who apparently take delight in smashing things. That's definitely the takeaway I get from the article, unless I'm missing something.
So that's the little summary paragraph at the beginning of every scientific study. And if you want to get the full PDF, you've got to pay $9 to click through.
I don't think it's worth $9 to be able to say that this is just yet another one of these dual-headed attempts. One of them is to turn political opposition into a case of mental illness, and the other one is to find some reason, any reason, whatever the reason is, there's got to be some reason that people aren't voting for people that write articles in the New York Times or write articles about people's need for chaos. And since people aren't voting for their policies, it can't be that people disagree with them. It certainly can't be that the majority of people disagree with them. They go to college in New York, for God's sake. So it's got to be something. And if it's not going to be the Russians, then it's going to be a very small group of wild-eyed agitators who, through their own malignant vision of the power of chaos, have somehow managed to dupe. The easily dupable, rubes and hayseeds out there in flyover country. It explains everything, really, when you think about it. And I say, this is why Donald Trump is president, and this is why we are going to continue to fight you people until you understand that it is neither mental illness nor a need for chaos to disagree with your plans for running this country into the toilet the same way that it's been run into the toilet hundreds of times throughout history.
By the way, this need for chaos indicator correlates also with somewhat strongly with supporters of Bernie Sanders, but negatively in sympathy with Hillary Clinton.
Imagine.
This is... So the authors of the study says that these people who have this need for chaos are often express that by willingly spreading misinformation. And their goal isn't even to advance their own ideology, but merely to undermine political elites. They are disruptors. They like to share rumors, not because they believe the rumors to be true, but because they believe that they will create havoc by doing so.
Well, you have to give the guy credit for being half right. For the New York Times, if you can get somebody to get an article half right, I think that's not only worthy of enormous praise, Operation Good Job, New York Times, but also certainly worthy of note. They are correct that there are people out there who are determined to undermine the existing political order, but to say that they are willingly spreading information they know to be false is just plain wrong. It's just wrong. They're spreading information that the people who write these kind of papers believe to be false, but that doesn't mean it's false.
I think what they're saying is they really don't care whether it's false or not. The key is, will it upset the political elites? Again, half right. It's true. There are groups of people out there, and I'm a proud member of them, and so are you, who are spreading
ideas that are uncomfortable to the political elites that have run this country since the mid-'60s. That part I agree with. But to say that everything that we say, or even a percentage of what we say, is knowingly false, is to once again come back to the idea that the people who disagree with me are either insane or liars. And this is the part of the equation that they don't get. And as long as they continue to make statements like this, people like me and like you and like the people who watch this show are going to be ready to fight them on every level, up to and including the level of the Second Amendment, which protects us from the depredations of stupid people who are quite convinced that they're smarter than everybody else.
So, Bill, while this has political implications, clearly, they say there was a correlation between the need for chaos and support for President Trump or support for Senator Sanders. However, primarily, the authors of this study went out and they conducted 6 surveys, 4 in the United States and 2 in Denmark. In the United States, they interviewed a total of 5,157 subjects or participants. In Denmark, some 1,336. And these are the questions that were indicators of this personality type that feels a need for chaos. Affirmative responses to these questions, for example.
I can feel it coming.
There are 5 of them here. I'll go through them really rapidly and then let you react to them. Question number 1, I fantasize about a natural disaster wiping out most of humanity such that a small group of people can start all over. 2, I think society should be burned to the ground. 3, when I think about our political and social institutions, I cannot help thinking, just let them all burn. 4, we cannot fix the problems in our social institutions. We need to tear them down and start over. And then finally, sometimes I just feel like destroying beautiful things.
Well, sometimes I do feel like destroying beautiful things, like articles written by psychiatrists or psychologists that get a lot of attention and are the envy of the relatively limited universe that exists in New York City cocktail parties at art displays and galleries and so on. But other than that, I'm not much impressed. Here's the thing I find interesting about this: you can. As is clearly indicated by this so-called study, you can phrase a question in such a way that your desire for freedom comes out making you look like you're a lunatic. Would I like to see the institutions? Would I like to see the political institutions of this country burned to the ground? I would. That's not because I'd like to see things chaotic or because I'd like to see them burn. I'd like to see them burned to the ground because they no longer represent the people and because they no longer perform the functions which they were designed for. So, since they have continued to do things like remain above the law and commit treason, felony leaks of classified information with no consequences. Yeah, I want to see it burned down and I want to see it rebuilt to come to fit in the box that it came in. All of this is true, but when you get right down to it, Scott, really when you get down to the nub of the issue, is the word chaos, because the word chaos is actually a pretty decent indication of as close as the progressive mind can come to the idea of freedom. And that's the operative situation here. It's the operative word, it's the operative assumption underneath all of this study, is the idea that people who want freedom are chaotic, that they're destroying the social order. I am totally in favor of destroying the social order. I think social orders have gotten us into trouble everywhere we've had social order. That term, to me, is a repugnant term and one to be very, very afraid of. This is not the same thing as the rule of law. As a matter of fact, social order is often the antithesis of the rule of law, because social order is a series of hierarchies laid out by elitist people on the top who have no way to actually influence the majority of the people in this country to do what they want them to do. And so they come up with all kinds of methods of either government coercion or character assassination through social media to get people to do what they want them to do. And I'm not going to do what they want me to do. And you're not either. And neither are the people watching this. We are not going to do what they want us to do. Now, if they want to call that chaotic, I'm fine with that. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. And when you hear people talk about this country's got to be unified, whatever gave you that idea? I mean, seriously, whatever gave you that idea? Certainly, unless we're facing an existential war like we did in World War II, the idea of the country being unified should be anathema to Americans. The entire idea of America is that you should have the freedom to speak your mind, bring your opinion to the marketplace of ideas and see if it sells. And every time you run into this kind of thing on the part of the progressive left, this idea that anybody who disagrees with me must be mentally ill, you know why they're doing that. They're doing that because they cannot convince the American people that their ideas are of worth. And so, since they don't have the power to lock us up because of the Second Amendment, which bothers them enormously. By the way, have you noticed that every single time you hear these kind of people talk about this issue of shootings, they always talk about gun control, never talk about murder control or crime control or any of this rest of the stuff, rape control? No. They hate the guns because the guns prevent them from telling us what to do. So if they can't use the coercive force of the government to tell us what to do, then they will start to do the next best thing. They'll use the social media levers, but in this particular case, what they'll try and do is they'll try and define anybody who has a position opposed to their particular view of social order as being chaotic, basically sociopathic, lunatics who want to do nothing but destroy the Mona Lisa, rip it to shreds, and then dance on the fire of the paintings in the Louvre going up in flames. I understand where they're coming from because they're not really as smart as they're not only not as smart as they think they are, they're not really very smart at all. But certainly, I think anybody who's had any dealings with these kind of academics can see through this kind of nonsense pretty clearly. So yes, I don't doubt the results of their test, but I do doubt the fact that if you were to ask a question like, do you want to see the institutions of this country burned to the ground? That's one way of phrasing the question. It could have also phrased the question, would you like to see the institutions of this country be reformed so that they are in line with the process of law and back to the original boundaries of powers that they originally had? I would have answered yes to both of those questions. And if I'd put them to the second question, I would come off not only sounding like a patriot, but the most rational of people on the face of the earth. And anybody who would oppose that would be a screaming lunatic. So march on, academia.
And frankly, Bill, your shameless support of the framers of the Constitution just shows that you are far too moderate for those people who have the need for chaos, because they certainly would have been with the so-called anti-federalists who didn't like the idea of a centralized government. And so, you're sort of the even-keeled, middle-of-the-road guy here. It occurs to me as I hear the results of this study that
I'm a middle-of-a-road guy. I'm a middle-of-a-road guy when I'm confronted with actual full-blown libertarians who I respect enormously. But when you take the position in general, as opposed to the position of the British Empire, we're all pretty much in the same little boat.
Well, the need for chaos in this article, obviously Thomas Edsall is trying to make a point, and I will grant that he may be cherry-picking the study that was done by the three authors of this study who won this award at the American Political Association. But that aside, it's clearly indicated that need for chaos is some sort of pathology, but need for stability is not. And I know I've been in social situations and even in family situations where I could say that the need for stability as the overriding force in that relationship can be a pathology in itself. It keeps people from confronting. It keeps people from disrupting the social order, even if it's toxic.
Right. There was plenty of stability and very little chaos in Adolf Hitler's Germany. Very little. The chaos that was inflicted upon the Third Reich was inflicted from without, but within, that was an extremely well-ordered society with very little chaotic activity at all. And that's why these people are attracted to it, because they like the idea of having people telling other people what to do. They like the idea of being able to enforce the will of some people upon others, even if it's the majority on the minority. They're crazy about it. That's why so many of these left-wing psychologists are working on papers like this. It would have been an interesting study to have win the prestigious award for best paper of the year for this American psychological cabal of
it's the psychological division of the contest by the American Political Association, I believe, if I got that right.
Oh, for the love of God. Okay, fine. Well, here's what would have been an interesting and useful subject for them. I think it would have been an interesting, useful, and appropriately award-winning subject for them to study how the loss of the nuclear family and the loss of fathers in the household are the predominant cause in terms of the backgrounds of the mass shooters that we've seen over the last 20 years. That would be a very interesting study. It'd be useful to know. I think another interesting study would be to see the effect of what 24-hour instantaneous worldwide fame does to people who were normally going to go out and commit suicide by cop anyway, but now who have the opportunity to have their faces on every TV screen in the entire world, have their name emblazoned in big gold letters, even as they're spoken of in hushed terms. I think that would be an interesting paper to write. But if you want to write a paper about how people who prefer chaos to your sense of order and order by your rules, that's fine. Again, I'll come back to my original observation on this. What it really is, more than anything, is it's a way of these elitist snobs to confirm for other elitist snobs that what happened in 2016 was an aberration and not a rejection of every single thing that they believe in and that they think the American people believe in, or at the very least should believe in. And if they don't believe in, then they will be made to believe in it. And this is exactly what we're dealing with here. And once again, we come back to the same old thing. It's amazing to me, really. It really is how I could have had this under my nose for as long as I did, 30, 40 years, and not see it. Ultimately, it comes down to the Second Amendment protecting us from the depredations of these genetically defective control freaks who are determined to tell other people that they have to live according to their mandates, their ideas of law and order, their ideas of rule, their idea of lawlessness, so long as they're highly placed enough, and all the rest of it. I am enormously not only relieved, this is the only thing that actually allows me to stay in the fight, is to know that the people who are talking about all of the oppression, the people that are talking about the rigid order of people and how they must conform to the social standards laid out by them, I constantly marvel, and I'm able to sleep quite comfortably at night knowing that those people are afraid of paring knives, and the people that they mean to intimidate or simply coerce into doing what they tell you to do are armed to the teeth. That thought makes me exceedingly happy.
Well, if you've read even a few of them, you know that scientific studies always end with a paragraph that says that the main finding of this study is that more study is needed.
No, well,
and one of the things that we admire about the members at BillWhittle.com is they never stop learning. In fact, they make it possible for thousands of other people around the world to learn through their membership dollars that sustain this enterprise.
I'm sorry to interject. I think it brought up an interesting subject. These are people who are not only willing to learn, Scott, they're people who are willing to teach. I learn so much from the people that write into me. There's so many details that I get wrong. I usually don't get the big things wrong, but either I get them wrong or perspectives that I didn't understand. An awful lot of this comes from our members writing their own blog, basically, at BillWhittle.com. But to say that they're learning things hopefully is true, but without question, as far as I'm concerned, they are certainly teaching things as well, and I just wanted to get that said.
And they learn as much from each other as they do from any of us here on the other side of the camera. So we're grateful for the teaching and the learning. If you'd like to join the members and engage in this colloquy of ideas, go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.
I don't know what a colloquy is, but it sounds like a gathering of communists.
Can take an antibiotic to treat that.